Of all the shadows cast over the game of basketball, his was the biggest. Of all the men I've ever met in college sports, Hank Iba was the greatest. Henry Iba was indeed a legend. He was the first coach to win consecutive NCAA championships in 1945 and 1946. His 767 career wins was third best at the time of his retirement. And during his tenure as athletic director and basketball coach at Oklahoma State, 5 different sports won a total of 19 national championships. In 1964, he stepped onto the world stage as coach of the U.S. Olympic basketball team, which was riding a 37-game winning streak. The 64 team added 9 wins to the streak and beat the Soviets in the gold match at the Tokyo Games. 4 years later, Coach Iba became the only person to coach multiple Olympic teams when he led the Americans again, this time beating Yugoslavia for gold in Mexico City. In 1972, Coach Iba was called on a third time to coach the team for the Munich Games. The gold medal game against the Soviets is still the most controversial game in international basketball history. The young amateurs from the U.S. had only played as a team for 12 exhibition games. The Soviet semi-pros had hundreds of games together as a team. Even though the U.S. had won 63 straight Olympic Games, the Soviets were certainly not the usual underdog. The Americans fell behind early and clawed their way back into the game, taking their first lead with just 3 seconds left on the clock. From there, confusion reigned and the game was reset several times. The Soviets' Hail Mary pass was finally successful and the Olympic streak had come to an end. Rounds of protests were denied, and decades later, the Americans' silver medals are still unclaimed. "12 years later, it was Olympic time again, and Coach Bob Knight called on Mr. Iba to be his honorary coach. Knight's group of youngsters on his '84 team included Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, and Chris Mullin. Midway through the Olympic tournament, and sensing his team needed a boost, Knight turned to Coach Iba.
He looked those kids over, and you could have heard a pin drop. And he's got that gravelly voice to begin with, and his whole speech lasted about 30 seconds. And he looked those kids over, and he said, "You know," he said, "when I watched that game last night," he said, "we didn't get after him like we got to get after him." He said, we let him go too much. He said, "Now when we play France tonight," he said, "I want to see you guys get after their ass right from the beginning." And that was the whole speech.
Henry Iba died in 1993 at the age of 88. These Citizen Athlete Awards, named in his honor, began the very next year. The first Master of Ceremonies was sportscaster and longtime Iba friend, Curt Goudy.
Now, his first name was Mr. Iba. He didn't demand it. He didn't say that's what you have to do. It was just out of respect. He was one of a kind. And those that knew him knew that they'd met a special man. So you've done honor to the guy to start this award, Citizen Athlete. He was all about citizenship, all about everything that was right in college sports.
Mike Krzyzewski, longtime coach at Duke, also spoke warmly about his mentor.
I first got to know him in 1984 in the Olympics, and I was a special assistant to Coach Knight during the Olympics. That meant I drove the bus. I did just about anything they wanted me to do, and I did it even though I was the coach at Duke at that time, because I knew that being around Coach Knight, who was a great coach, I would have the opportunity to meet other great people. For me, the summer of '84 to spend with Coach Iba turned my life around as a coach. And since then, we've gone to 9 Final Fours. There are many things in common with Coach Knight and Coach Iba. One of them is they could not pronounce my name. Coach Iba never pronounced my name, right, Bill? I mean, he would, that Polish coach, Mike. And I was always very jealous of Coach Iba because he had as many vowels in his 3-letter name as I have in my 10-letter name. In the 10 years that I've known him, I've learned a lot. And when I say I know him, you say, Coach Iba passed away. People of his stature never pass away. What we're talking about tonight with this award is we're talking about an award that honors people who do not make excuses. We're talking about people who put others ahead of them, who don't live in their own little lives, but try to permeate throughout our society goodwill and ambassadorship. And that's why this is an important event, and that's why we have to make sure it goes on and on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to welcome you to the Rotary Club of Tulsa's Henry P. Iba Citizens Athlete Awards. Tonight, we welcome back our Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Seth Davis, with Sports Illustrated and CBS Sports.
For more than a decade, college basketball fans have enjoyed taking the annual trip with Seth Davis and the rest of the CBS gang on the road to the Final Four. As a 1992 graduate of Duke University, it's easy to see his love for college hoops and his Blue Devil blood. Along with his duties as an in-studio analyst for the network's coverage of college basketball, Davis is a regular contributor to CBS At the Half. This busy guy is also found hosting the award-winning Seth Davis Show on CampusInsiders.com. When he's not talking, he's writing. He's been with Sports Illustrated for so long, he's now called a senior writer for the magazine. He's also a contributor for SI.com. Along with basketball, Seth can be found covering golf and authoring several best-selling books. His latest, Wooden, A Coach's Life, was a bestseller last year. About the only thing you won't see Seth doing anymore is performing stand-up comedy, which he did from time to time in New York City in the last century. He was sort of the warm-up to the warm-up to the warm-up. He loves the Iba Awards and everything they stand for. Tonight, he's accomplishing a rare MC three-peat. Please welcome our defending Master of Ceremonies champion, Seth Davis.
Thanks for having me back, everybody. I'm the house band. This is now it's my 4th year overall, my 3rd in a row as the MC of this unbelievable event and this great crowd. Thank you. It's only because Jimmy Fallon keeps turning them down. 22 years, can you believe it, this Rotary Club? There's 100-year anniversary this year and 22 years holding the Iba event. So give them a round of applause for that.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet and the home of the brave.
Good evening. We Rotarians get to do some pretty neat stuff, don't we? Service above, you can clap, that's okay. So service above self is our motto. Service above self is our oath. These three words orient us in everything that we do and that we feel as a club, even in honoring tonight's athletes. The video obviously demonstrated what our club has done and what it will continue to do. We can all reach in front of us and grab a glass of cooled water, but the people of Nicaragua couldn't until the Rotary Club of Tulsa showed up. Now, 425 water wells later, they're free of disease and they can walk themselves to get a glass of water just like we can.
I worked for Mr. Iba at Oklahoma State. Mr. Iba used to say that Christmas time is when you get better. Mr. Iba used to say you get better in the month of February. Mr. Iba used to say when you get to the charity stripe, that's why they call it the charity stripe.
He's been known to stomp his foot at a player and sometimes even a ref just to get his point across. He's been called hyper-enthusiastic, and that's by the people who love him. This fall, Coach Barry Hinson will begin his 15th season as a college basketball head coach. It will be his 4th year at Southern Illinois, where he's trying to get the Salukis to the NCAA tournament, a place he's never been as a head coach, but certainly deserves to go. Coach Hinson first appeared on the Tulsa scene in the late 80s when he was head coach at Bishop Kelly High School. His enthusiasm was infectious as he introduced the start of each season with Midnight Madness, a new idea at the high school level. It wasn't long before Hinson graduated to the college ranks when Bill Self, his old OSU buddy, landed the head job at ORU. They turned the ORU program around, and before you know it, tonight's keynote speaker was promoted to the top ORU spot when Self moved to crosstown rival TU. After a couple of successful years with the Golden Eagles, Missouri State and the Missouri Valley Conference called. Coach Hinson spent 9 solid years in Springfield. Unfortunately, his Bears hold the dubious record of being the highest-ranked team not to get into the NCAA's Big Dance twice. Even though he might be considered height-challenged in the world of college basketball, there's no mountain he wouldn't climb for his players and his teams. It's a real toss-up whether he's a better barbecue chef or basketball coach. That should tell you what a great coach he is, because his barbecue is amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the pride of Marlow, Oklahoma, Coach Barry Hinson.
Oh, it's good to be home. My mom taught me a long time ago the first words out of your mouth when you enter a room should always be to thank people. I want to thank the Rotary Club of Tulsa because I don't mind telling you this is a special night for me, because as you've heard me at many press conferences, I have quoted Mr. Iba. I knew Mr. Iba. I worked with Mr. Iba at Oklahoma State. So tonight is really special. But I went to Oklahoma State. This is how I met Mr. Iba. I decided upon graduation of high school at Marlow. My mother, my father, my brother all went to Baylor, which is the largest Baptist educational institution in the world. But I wanted to do something different. I wanted to go to the Harvard of the Midwest, and I went to Oklahoma State University. And I know you'll find this hard to believe, but Oklahoma State did not have a scholarship for me. I got a $50 Lions Club scholarship and a $100 savings bond from the United American Legion that has now matured to $214. So when I went to Oklahoma State, I was assigned to the college work-study program. And I was assigned, at that time, it was Gallagher Hall, and I reported every day to Sam Aubrey, Byron Byrd, Chet Bryant, and of all things, Mr. Iba. Mr. Iba still had an office there. And I'd get to go in every day, and I would hang out with those guys, and I'd do my chores, and basically, I don't mind telling you, I was a janitor at Oklahoma State. That's what I did. I cleaned bathrooms, and they were the cleanest bathrooms in the Big 8. I like that. Thank you for clapping. Those are... But I met Mr. Iba, and I got a chance to be around him, and I'll never forget, I asked Mr. Iba if I could come out and visit with him, and he said, come on out to the house, and I'll never forget the day I went out, and it was great, and we sit down in his living room, and I said, I just want to pick your brains, Mr. Iba, and I pulled out this notebook, and Coach Knight's right, he had that gravelly voice, and he goes, son, put that notebook up. I'm going to talk, and you're going to listen. I was pretty much scared before I went in there, and now it was confirmed. And he said, I'm going to give you 8 points, 8 points to think about. And this first point, and I'll never forget this as long as I live, he said, all you pups, and for those of you who do not understand what that means, it's basically another term for rookies, but all you pups, all you're worried about is how to put that orange thing in the hole. The thing you've got to figure out is how to keep that orange thing out of the hole. And I'll never forget that. And then he gets to about point number 3. And I'm thinking, my God, he's going to ask me to repeat the 8 points. I have no idea what points 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 were because I was scared to death I was going to have to answer the question. I'll never forget. And Skip and Gene are here tonight, and I got a chance to see them, and it's always a privilege to see them. But I'll never forget, if many of you were at his funeral, and you know it was a day of unbelievably bad weather, but yet everybody made it. And that pays honor and privilege to a great man. I am getting older. And I hate when people say you're old school. Because to me, it's just the way I was raised. I want to challenge you tonight. 3 things I'd really like to challenge you to do. First and foremost, I'd like for you to treat everyone you meet as if they're the most important person in the world. My father taught me that a long time ago. I'm not here to judge. I'm a human being. I'm not white. I'm not black. I'm not brown. I'm just a human being. We have gotten to the point in our society where we divide ourselves up. And it's just not right. The incidents that we've just now faced, whether it be Ferguson or Baltimore or the most recent in South Carolina, maybe it's because how we treat people. Ladies and gentlemen, I am blessed beyond years. I love this city. I love this state. Thank you for allowing me to come back home. God bless you.